Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you today by Megapix Media. Joining me is Adam Legge, who is president of the Business Council of Alberta. Thanks for joining us today, Adam.
Thanks for having me on, Mario.
Well, recently, Adam, the organization launched a new initiative called Define the Decade. Let's start the conversation off by just explaining for us just what this initiative is and what it's all about.
Well, Define the Decade is one part vision for prosperity in Alberta and one part economic development strategy. Many people, I think, are sitting wondering, are Alberta's best days behind us? And our members are firmly of the view that our best days are ahead of us and that Alberta is just getting started. But we need to really understand, what does a prosperous Alberta look like by 2030? And then how do we build the economic development plan and activities that will enable us to achieve that vision over time?
So can you talk a little bit about the specifics on how this will work? Like what's involved in this initiative?
A couple of key phases. The first really is some background and competitive research. We're really building a sense of Alberta's strengths and assets, our economic base, our sector base. Then we're looking at comparable and competitive jurisdictions. What are they doing? Who are we up against in terms of attracting people and businesses and capital? What are the other jurisdictions we're competing with doing in terms of their strategies? How are they positioning themselves? What are the great things they're doing that we may want to emulate or do ourselves? So that'll form a bit of a background picture. We're then going to go out and engage with Albertans and ask them, what does a good life by 2030 look like? Define for us those key elements of it. We're then going to take that, distill that down, and really then go to some smaller regional roundtables and focus groups and say to folks, does this resonate with you? How might we build this out? How might we make it a little bit stronger? We'll then come up with a sort of high-level, broad-based prosperity vision for Alberta, engaged and informed by Albertans. And then we're going to get to some more of the strategy and plan elements. We're going to work with our task force and a number of stakeholders, including chambers of commerce, economic development agencies, to say, here's the vision. How do we then put in place the right policy, the right incentives, the right economic platforms, and the right ways in which business can then drive job creation, investment growth to achieve that prosperous vision? So it's going to be informed by Albertans. It'll really reflect what Albertans see as their desired Alberta by 2030. Yeah. And then let the business leaders, the entrepreneurs, do what they do best, which is invest and create jobs to enable us to achieve that.
So, Adam, what would be the timeline for this? And like, when do you expect to say have a report out on what you've found?
Well, one thing we want to do is make sure we're giving Albertans a sense of how the project is progressing. So we're going to be releasing some interim work on all of our background research, our competitive assessment in October. We're then going to be working with our task force team to really then release the economic plan and the vision itself early in 2022. And then put that in front of both levels of government, provincial and federal, to ensure that they have the right policies in place to make sure that we can achieve that goal by 2030.
Okay. Now, I know there's a number of people on the task force, and for our viewers here, I'll have the list in the text form on our website. But can you talk a little bit about the task force, without naming all of them, obviously, but and who is involved in this?
Yeah, so I am really fortunate. I get to work with 115 of Alberta's top CEOs and entrepreneurs, but the hard part of this project was distilling it down to a task force. So we've selected 14 of Alberta's top CEOs and entrepreneurs to be part of this task force. It's co-chaired by Susanna Pierce, who's the country chair and president of Shell Canada, and Corey Jansen, who's the co-CEO of Alta ML, which is an artificial intelligence company in Edmonton. So we've really strived to capture a multitude of sectors. We've tried to capture a multitude of geographies across the province. We have companies represented Fort McMurray, Edmonton, and Calgary. We've got a diversity of men and women on our group. We've got Indigenous leaders and business leaders in the mix. We've got different sectors from energy, technology, manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, you name it, are really the broad base of Alberta's economic picture. So we've really tried to create some diversity. We've got some young leaders in the home building industry as well. So we've got some youth participating in that, youth from a business leadership standpoint. So we've really tried to complement that. But we've got some, some big companies in there like Shell Canada, like Enbridge, like Cenovus, but also a great mix of some mid-sized companies in Alberta as well.
Okay, super. Now, earlier in the conversation, you talked about sort of a positive outlook for Alberta, and that, we're not dead. Can we get the Alberta Advantage back?
I think we can. That term has definitely got some loaded tension to it, but I think we can. We have so many things that other jurisdictions in the world will kill for. We have a great quality of life. We have an amazing environment here in Alberta. We have a incredible talent pool of people who are skilled and highly educated. We have a young population. We've got great recreation. We have an attractive tax base, affordable housing, generally speaking, considering other locations in Canada. So we've got the nuggets, we've got the core DNA of what we need. We just need to create some purpose, some goalposts, and some purposeful plan to get us to that end state. And that's what we're hoping to do, because I think we really do have the ability to show the world that Alberta is just getting started, and that we have a future in our resource sector, in the evolving energy transformation, in agriculture, in technology, artificial intelligence, manufacturing, transportation, logistics. All of these are critical sectors for Alberta, and they will be in the future. We just have to make sure we're very purposeful in how we get there.
Let's talk about that for a second, Adam. All the industries that you mentioned, obviously, this province has been an oil and gas province for decades. Basically our fortunes and our failures in many ways are, tied in so intricately with that industry. And we've talked about diversification for so long. First of all, how important is that as we move forward? And secondly, how do you think we're doing, like, in the province in diversifying the economy, say in the last couple of years?
Well, diversification is a really critical piece. It's also, again, one of those challenging words that we seem to have talked about it a lot, but really not necessarily felt like we've got there as much. And we're trying to really wrap our work around this notion of economic expansion and diversification, such that we grow the pie. We're not trying to take the existing pie and to slice it into more pieces. We want to grow the economic base of activity to include more technology and innovation, to include more agriculture, include more manufacturing and logistics. So diversification is really quite important, but I also want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that grows the overall economic activity. So it's important. Now, in terms of how Alberta's been doing, if you look at some of the statistics of GDP and employment, we have far less GDP and employment coming from the oil and gas sector now than we did, say, back in the 1980s, 1990s.
Yeah,
a lot of things have begun to take up some greater positions in that. It's also been a result of the changing nature and the way that sector is operating, doing a lot more outsourcing. So some of those raw jobs and roles and activity are happening in other consulting type activities. But the one important part that we've all recognized is in the 2014-2015 oil price collapse, and we've seen such a big hole created by the changing and evolving energy sector. Other economic activities like technology, like manufacturing, are filling that hole, but it's so big, it is going to take time. And economic diversification, economic expansion doesn't happen in 1, 2, 3, 4 years. It happens closer to sort of decade-long cycles. So that's why we're talking about defining the decade. It's Alberta's chance to really shape what we want to be. It is going to take some time to fill that large hole. It's going to take time for that sector itself to evolve into some of these energy transformations. So we want to make sure that people are on side and on board with the notion that this is our goal, but it is going to take time, and it will likely be something that we'll focus on over the course of a decade.
All right, super. Thanks for joining us today, Adam.
Thanks, Mario.
All right, super. That was Adam Legge, president of the Business Council of Alberta. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you today by Megapix Media.